Welcome to R&R Living Life. The day Rick and I had been planning for has arrived, making it to the tip of Cape York, a journey of epic proportions, another bucket list item ticked off today. Rick and I now have to give some thought as to what next to put on our bucket list, but that can wait until we get home again. We were up early enough to watch the sunrise as we ate our breakfast, but what a way to start the day. Rick and I left Punsand Bay, 5 kilometres southwest of the tip as the crow flies, early, firstly to arrive as the tide was going out, and secondly in the hope that we were the only ones there to enjoy our moment. The journey took just over half an hour as there was no traffic. The first part of the drive was back to the croc tent and then a 15-kilometre drive to Panjika or the tip, which took us the most of the time. That turned out to be one of the most interesting road trips we had driven on over the course of this trip so far. The landscape became increasingly wild and remote, with dense rainforest, shallow creek crossings, and a winding, narrow road between patches of small open clearings and heavily forested areas. On reaching the car park at Panjika, we were greeted by a sign marking the geographic significance of the location, as well as stunning views of the surrounding seascape and nearby islands. We were nearly to the northernmost tip of Australian mainland, marked by a famous signpost on a rocky headland, with sweeping views of the Torres Strait and surrounding islands, the very edge of the Cape York Peninsula. We had been looking forward to this. Rick and I took the time to savour the moment and to soak up the scenery before we walked further out onto the beach. I was thankful that the tide had already receded. What an adventure walking along the beach to the tip. As usual, I explored, looking for interesting things in the sand, while Rick headed off, and then I had to catch up. From the tip sign we could see two islands, York Island, the tall and pointy one to our left, and Iborak Island to the right, while Frangipani Bay was to the west. It was hard to believe that it was approximately 150 kilometres to Papua New Guinea from here. Rick and I savoured the moment, soaking in the scenery. I was fascinated by the geology of the area, shaped by processes over millions of years, showing a mosaic of landforms influenced by tectonic activity, climate and erosion. The peninsula is formed from the northern part of the Great Dividing Range, folded during the Carboniferous period some 300 million years ago, when Australia collided with what is now part of South America and New Zealand, with the range experiencing significant erosion since. Around 40 million years ago, the Indo-Australian tectonic plate began to split apart from the ancient supercontinent Gondwana as it collided with the Pacific plate on its northward journey. The high mountain ranges of central New Guinea emerged around 5 million years ago, and in the lee of this collision zone, the ancient rock formations of what is now Cape York Peninsula remained largely undisturbed. The tropical landscapes of Cape York are among the most stable in the world. Long undisturbed by tectonic activity, the peninsula is an extremely eroded, almost level, low plain, dominated by meandering rivers and vast floodplains, with some very low hills rising to 800 metres in the Mackillawah Ranges on the eastern side around Cowan. The west coast borders the Gulf of Carpentaria, and the east coast borders the Coral Sea, with the peninsula bordered by waters on three sides, the north, east and west. I spent quite a lot of time just stopping and standing and looking around. It really is a magical place. Not only the stunning scenery but the vastness of it. It really does put things into perspective when you see it up close. Areas of Queensland and Australia, for that matter, that you hear a lot about, and then to actually be here. I was blown away by the fact that Papua New Guinea was just across the water, not even as far as from home to Brisbane. From the headland we could see a bulk carrier making its way east. To look out over the Arafura Sea and the Torres Strait Islands was incredible. To think that the Arafura Sea is a shallow marginal body of the western Pacific Ocean, covering approximately 650,000 square kilometres, overlying the continental shelf between Australia and Western New Guinea, and acts as a crucial geographic and cultural bridge between the Oceania and Asia. After taking the time to savour the moment, soak up the scenery, and reflect on the incredible journey that had brought us to this remote and unforgettable destination, we began to make our way back over the rocky headland, overlooking the rugged coastline, with sweeping 360-degree views stretching as far as the eye could see, to where the Coral Sea meets the Torres Strait and Arafura Sea. We stopped at the cane on the top of the headland, enjoying the sea breeze, the beaches and views that were just incredible. We had ticked off another bucket list item. When sea levels were low during the Ice Age, when ice sheets and glaciers reached their greatest extent on the Earth's surface, the Arafura Shelf and the Gulf of Carpentaria and the Torres Straits formed a large flat land bridge that connected Australia and New Guinea, and eased the migration of humans from Asia into Australia. The Torres Strait, a vital maritime waterway and island archipelago, spans 150 kilometres. The waterway is very shallow, with waters between 7 and 15 metres in depth, and containing a maze of reefs and islands bridging the Coral and Arafura Sea. There are over 200 islands scattered across the strait, with only 17 of these islands with present-day settlements. Neither Rick or I are fisher people, though we do enjoy eating fish. But looking out over the waters, I could well imagine why other people are drawn to the area, not just for the picturesque scenery like us, but for the fishing. The crystal clear shallows of the Torres Strait that make fishing fundamentally tied to the cultural identity of Torres Strait Islanders, who hold some of the highest seafood consumption rates in the world, and being one of the most remote and productive fishing regions in Australia, would certainly be a draw card to a lot of fishermen. Hence why we had seen so many vehicles towing boats on our trip up. No matter which way we looked, the scenery was stunning. On our travels we have seen some amazing colours of water in different parts of the coastline around Australia, and I don't think that there are enough names to cover the degrees of blue that we have seen. A colour palette doesn't come close. I really do take my hat off to artists who paint realistically and can depict water landscapes with so much accuracy. I have tried without much success, so I will stick with happy snapping. Once back at the Troopy, we made our way back past an abandoned resort. On the shores of Punsand Bay, right at the tip of Cape York, it was once a welcome oasis for dusty travellers, opened in 1986 as the Cape York Wilderness Lodge by Bush Pilots Airways. It was later operated by Ansett, and later Qantas as a luxury rainforest retreat. In 1982 it was sold again and renamed the Penjinko Wilderness Lodge. Amid reports of poor management, unpaid wages and a fire, it was closed for repairs in 2002 and never reopened. In North Queensland, a land of boom and bust, cyclones and pandemics, derelict hotels seem to be becoming something of a destination in themselves. But what a place to have stayed when it was running. It was then back on the road as we wound our way back through the rainforest. We did pass some vehicles on our return to the turn-off to Somerset Beach. 2 cars were in the process of crossing a very rough and wet section of the road. Talk about huge potholes followed by very deep corrugations. Overall, though, the road was in pretty good condition. However, we did need to take it slowly as it was quite windy, and with the vegetation to the edge of the road, we had to be on the lookout for vehicles coming the other direction. After checking it out, we continued on to Somerset Beach, a coastal locality split between the Shire of Torres and the Northern Peninsula Area region. Established in 1864 as a settlement by the British and Queensland governments, intended to serve as a refuge and supply depot for passing ships and a base to establish a connection with Britain via the Torres Strait, but also to counter the presence of a French colony on New Caledonia. Somerset became a violent place during the Jardine family's rule, which was marked by frontier violence, disease and hunger. By 1876 the town's role as a port was redundant because it had been found that Thursday Island was a better option, and the settlement was eventually abandoned. Through government neglect of the outpost and the British government withdrawing its marine contingent, leaving the settlement weakened and exposed. The pearl shell industry that was developing at the time became more invested at Thursday Island. There is very little left of the historic site of Somerset Beach, with only remnants of an early European settlement and pearling station. We did enjoy the panoramic views of Albany Passage and the Torres Strait Islands. From Somerset we made our way back to Bamaga and onto the DC-3 aircraft crash site memorial. There are several World War II aircraft crash sites located near Bamaga and the surrounding Northern Peninsula area, mostly in the vicinity of the former Higgins Field, now Bamaga Airport. The most notable accessible sites are the fenced-off DC-3 wreckage on Airport Road and a Beaufort bomber north of the runway. Our first stop was at the DC-3 wreckage. The scattered remains of the aircraft were surreal, scattered over a small area in the scrub. The aircraft was under charter for military purposes and left Brisbane's Archerfield Airfield on May the 4th, 1945, on a regular courier trip to New Guinea. While circling to land at Higgins Field, it struck the top of a hill while landing in darkness and crashed. The aircraft was partially burnt, incinerating all 6 personnel on board. From there, we made our way back past the end of the runway and onto the Bristol Beaufort Mark 8 site, situated in the bush on the northern side of the Higginsfield runway, possibly a salvage parts dump. We drove past the rusted remains of fuel drum decoys scattered throughout the area, and remnants of the 33 operational base. The fuelage and wings of the RAAF Beaufort bomber A9190 was located at was possibly a salvage part dump on the northern side of the Higgins Field. While returning from Madang to Cairns in October 1945, the aircraft suffered an oil pressure problem which caused it to divert to Port Moresby for repairs. It left Port Moresby with a crew of 3 and 4 passengers. Halfway across the Coral Sea, the pilot was forced to feather one of the 2 engines and change course for Higgins Field, where he tried to make a straight-in approach downwind without flaps or brakes, continuing beyond the end of the strip, crashing into an earth mound and was wrecked. Fortunately, no one on board was injured, although the Japanese surrender was announced in Australia on the 14th of August 1945. RAAF units and the return of men and aircraft from the Pacific War Zone continued for over a year. Crash sites like these were sobering, as World War II brought huge impacts to this part of the world, even though it was not the centre of fighting. Higgins Airfield, previously known as Jackie and sometimes called Red Point or Red Island Point, was developed during late 1942 as a dispersal airfield for the Horn Island Airfield and was upgraded during 1943-44. Higgins is now operated as Ingenue Bamaga Airport, located about 8 kilometres southeast of Bamaga. What a morning we were having! After refuelling in Bamaga, we made our way out to Seisha, surrounded by pristine tropical waters and lush landscapes, and increasingly known as the gateway to the Torres Strait. Sasha was originally known as Red Island Point, situated north of New Mapoon and west of Bamaga, sitting approximately just over 1,000 kilometres north-northwest of Cairns, the most northerly mainland community in Queensland, positioned on the shores of the Torres Strait, the most northerly deep-water port on Cape York. The locality covers just over 2 square kilometres. What a history this place has, with the village at Red Island Point officially gazetted as Sasha on the 26th of February 1976. Sasha serves as a key gateway to the Torres Strait, operating a harbour used by supply vessels and the Pedals ferry service linking Cape York to Thursday Island, with most goods and services arriving by supply vessel or sourced in Bamaga, just over 5.5 kilometres to the southeast. What a harbour, located on the western side of Cape York Peninsula with crystal clear blue waters. On our return to Punsand Bay, we stopped in at Cable Beach, the landing point for the undersea cable from Thursday Island, known as the Patterson Telegraph Station. The old telegraph cable was part of the crucial 1880s communication link connecting Queensland to the rest of the world via an undersea cable to Thursday Island. All that remains is a concrete junction box where the undersea armoured cable came ashore. The telegraph line ran from Laura up to the tip of Cape York, originally Patterson, later moved to Punsand Bay, and then via the underwater cable to Thursday Island. This cable was part of the broader Cape York telegraph line, which operated for 100 years from 1887 until 1987. From Cable Beach, Rick and I made our way back to camp, where we spent the afternoon relaxing beside the beach, taking in all that we had seen and achieved today. To cap off our stay here, we made our way over to the Corrugated Bar and enjoyed a delicious pizza for tea. Later that night we sat outside and enjoyed our last night here. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. Give us a thumbs up if you have. Join us next time as we leave Punsand Bay and head to Batavia Downs and then across to the PDR to Weipa. Take care. Enjoy your journey. Rick and Rosemary. R&R Live in Life.